and gentlemen, the Hero Mavrick 440. And what can I say? When I looked at this motorcycle for the first time at Hero World, truth be told, I was a little skeptical about what was it out to do. And boy, after riding it for about 200 kilometers today, I can tell you that it's tugging hard at my heart. This motorcycle has its own character, and the best thing that I found about this motorcycle is that it's not trying to be anything else. It has its own character, and it really makes it so likable, so lovable, that I'm really falling in love with it. There are so many things to talk about this motorcycle, and the most standout feature is something where I'm going to start this detailed review with. So if you're interested in this motorcycle, I recommend that you watch it until the end, because there's so much that I've learned about this motorcycle that you'd probably be interested in knowing those finer details which you probably not find elsewhere. So the most standout feature of this motorcycle, as I found out, is its comfort and the seating position here, along with the 7-step adjustable suspension with 130 mm travel at the rear, 43 mm front shocks with again 130 mm of travel, and this beautiful radar triangle is something that endows this motorcycle with fantastic comfort. You can ride it all day long, and the seating position here, as you can see, is such that it's not a cruiserish feet forward kind of a stance. It's not rear set either, but the foot pegs are somewhere in the middle. It's an open-chested, wide handlebar kind of a setup, and the seat is a deep cushion unit which keeps your behind in supreme comfort for really long hours. What's really amazing is that you can transfer some of your weight to your feet or to your arms as required, and while it's an upright stance, it is the adjustability that this motorcycle offers you in the way that you can move backward and forward, and the kind of comfort that you feel over long distances, which really is standout. So if you're someone who's looking for a relaxed kind of a motorcycle, be it for the city or for the highway, for long distances or for short journeys, this motorcycle really feels like it can do long distances, long durations without causing the rider much discomfort. The pillion seat is not very long, but it's very comfortable. So be it for a single rider or for riding with the pillion, it offers itself as a very comfortable solution. Now the other thing is the engine. All of us know that this is the same engine that we saw on the Harley X440 as well, but here it's in a different state of tune and it produces 2 Nm less. So the peak power here is again 27 HP and the peak torque is 36 Nm, which is again 2 Newton meters less, produced at 4000 RPM. But Hero claims that 90% of that 36 Newton meters of torque is produced at as low as 2000 RPM. And after riding this motorcycle for this entire day, I can say that that sounds true. Now about the engine, at about 1500 RPM you can feel the torque flowing through. At 2000 RPM the engine is completely smooth, it's completely knock free. You can feel that torque really coming in. There is a mild step up at 3000 RPM, but there is a sharp spike of power at 4000 RPM, and from that point onward all the way to its limiter, which cuts in at about 6000 RPM, there is a very strong flow of power and the engine is really on song. You'd want to keep it there, but there's a bit of a problem. As you can see, there is no windscreen here. So the moment you move above 90 kilometers per hour on the highway, especially if it's a windy area like this one, the Great Run, the wind blast becomes a little too much and it becomes a bit of a deterrent for you to go above 100 kilometers per hour, because if your helmet is not a very high quality one, you will definitely feel the wind buffeting and it won't be very comfortable. So the wind blast is one of the issues here, and after 100 you want to roll down a little bit. Now in terms of its performance, in the first gear, this motorcycle will take you to 50 kilometers per hour. In the second gear, 75 kilometers per hour. The third gear will see you going past 100 kilometers per hour. And the fourth gear, 120. And fifth at 135 kilometers per hour. In the sixth gear, this motorcycle can reach a top speed of 150 kilometers per hour on the speedo. The clutch action is light and the tractability is amazing. Now, comparing it with the Harley X440, I really believe that the tractability there is slightly better, but having said that, this motorcycle will also allow you to trundle along without having to shift down too much. And in the sixth gear, this motorcycle is on a roll after 50 kilometers per hour. You won't need to shift down. In the fifth gear, from 40 kilometers per hour onwards. In the fourth gear, 30 kilometers per hour onwards. And in the third gear, 20 kilometers per hour onwards. However, in the second gear, even if you close the throttle, it'll keep moving on from 15 kilometers per hour onwards. So if it's a very slow moving traffic, you can put it in second and close the throttle and the motorcycle will keep trundling along. It'll not stall. Another important thing that you'd probably be interested in knowing is the cruising speeds, and if you're in sixth gear, you'll see 4000 RPM if you're at 100 kilometers per hour. In the fifth gear, you'll see 4500 RPM. And what that means is you still have 2000 clicks to go. So it's quite relaxed, but at 4000 RPM is also when the power really kicks in and you'd want to roll in. But again, the wind blast is a bit of a deterrent. But 100 kilometers per hour is the speed at which this motorcycle is the most comfortable. And it's not because it cannot do better speeds. I think it's got to do with the aerodynamics. And if there is a good accessory which makes it a little bit more streamlined and allows the rider to tuck in a little bit and makes the wind blast go around him, I think that would be really useful in maintaining higher speeds, because I personally believe that technically this is capable of maintaining 110, 120 kilometers per hour on the highways, but the wind blast becomes a bit of an issue. The seat height here is 803 mm, and for a rider like me who is 5 feet 10 inches, it offers a very comfortable riding position. As you can see, there's a bend at my knees and I'm easily able to put my heels down. The seat is very comfortable, so even if you're a shorter rider, 5 feet 5, 5 feet 6, you should not have any problem. Most of the motorcycles in this segment have a seat height of anywhere from 790 to 805 mm. And I think this one also is not too high, presents itself as a motorcycle which is very, very accessible. Another very important aspect that a lot of you would be interested in knowing about is how refined is the engine. And the good news is that this engine for the most part is very refined. For most of its cruising speeds, you hardly feel any vibrations. Only after 5000 RPM, when you're approaching the red line, you can feel a few vibrations on the foot peg and on the handlebars, but they're again very minor and you can disregard them. However, there was a difference in the amount of vibrations that I felt on two different motorcycles that I rode, and the motorcycle that I rode yesterday had slightly more vibrations while this one is a lot more refined. So I think generally, technically speaking, this motorcycle is vibe free, and if you really have to compare, I would say the Royal Enfield's J series engine is slightly more refined in the top end, but in the low to mid range, this is as refined as the J series engine. So generally a very, very refined motorcycle. The ground clearance is quite generous at 175 mm. So even if you're going soft roading or coming to places like this where you have a few obstacles to cross, won't be a problem. And another great aspect about this motorcycle is that you can saddle it. So if you're riding it standing up, it offers itself as a motorcycle which can be ridden without much problem. The handlebars are very accessible, and if you're standing up, the tank is tapered enough to allow for space for your thighs. And if you want to be straddling it off the road, it really is a decent motorcycle. Why I'm saying that is that if you're riding it long distance and getting off the road, and while it's not an off-roader, it has the capability to take bad patches and even some mild off-roading in its stride. It's not a motorcycle which is completely cruiserish and has a very slight bit of off-roading capability also built into it. So in that sense, it's a little bit more versatile than a few other motorcycles which it competes against, the Harley X440 included, even some of the Royal Enfields. I think it's a little bit more versatile than those motorcycles. It also comes across as a more urban-oriented motorcycle. It's good for the highway. And as I mentioned, if you want to take it slightly off the road also, it doesn't present itself as a motorcycle which doesn't entirely want to do it. Now, this little piece that you see here is also a good addition for the Pillion rider who would be getting a bit of a rest or support from this little backrest. The grab rail has also been rather well designed, though I really believe that had this recess been extended a little further, it would have been easier for the Pillion to hold on to. But generally for the rider, if you want to be pushing the motorcycle, it feels nice and ergonomic. About that, this is also lighter than the Harley by a couple of kgs, which means that for the power to weight ratio, this is the best in class, the class being 400cc or thereabouts, single cylinder, air-cooled, oil-cooled engines. The Royal Enfields are a lot less powerful, and if you look at the Speed 400, that one goes into the liquid cooled category. So if you compare it with the Harleys, it has better power to weight ratio, but the torque to weight ratio of that motorcycle is better than this one here. Another aspect about this motorcycle that you'd want to know is whether it heats up or not. And the good news is that it does not heat up at all, even after extended use. Rode it for over 200 kilometers and nor did I feel any difference in the performance of the engine. About the all-important fuel efficiency. Now, I've been riding it for about 200 kilometers, and if I can do the math with the range and the number of kilometers that I've done, I come to a number which is around 35 kilometers to the liter on the highway, and it should go down to about 27, 28 within the city. I cannot really authoritatively talk about the fuel efficiency within the city because I've not ridden it in the city much, but on the highway, I really believe that this can deliver 35 kilometers to the liter, which for a 400 plus cc motorcycle is pretty good. All in all, I would say that this is not a hustler. It's not a motorcycle which is very swift per se. It does not like being ridden very hard, but it's a beautiful motorcycle in terms of the fact that it rides in an effortless manner. It's a very good motorcycle for the city and for the highway as well. If you want to be maintaining consistent 100, 110 kilometers per hour speeds, this is very capable to do that. The engine is relaxed at all times. But if you're someone who wants to be riding very fast, if you want a motorcycle which goes really quickly on the road, is, you know, a very sharp corner carver, not that kind of motorcycle, but it's very relaxed, very refined, very, very comfortable. And if you're not in a hurry to be traveling long distances at a very, very fast pace, then I really think that this motorcycle is a very good tool to travel, to see the world, to soak in the views while being comfortable. Now, talking about another aspect which is related to performance, the ride and handling. As I've already mentioned, this is one of the most comfortable motorcycles in its class. The rider triangle, the suspension setup, the chassis, everything is really beautifully set up, and the handling also is pretty good for the most part. I'm comparing it with the likes of, say, the Royal Enfield Classic or the Hunter, and compared to those motorcycles, I really believe that this motorcycle has better agility. It is more poised in a straight line. It feels really stable. The braking is very reliable. Both the brakes, the 320 up front and 240 at the rear with the dual channel setup, is a very reliable braking setup. The tires are also quite reliable. 150 at the rear, 110 up front. I could have done with a little bit more grip at the rear. I've seen better quality tires. So if I really want to slide it, I can slide it. But generally speaking, in dry conditions, the tires are quite reliable. So if you're a hooligan, if you really want to be sliding the tires hard, if you are hell-bent on doing it, the tires, you know, will give way. But generally speaking, for most of the riders, the way they ride, the tires are very reliable. Now, coming back to the handling part, it's pretty agile, it's pretty nimble. The wheelbase here is shorter than the Harley, which means that it's a little bit more flickable. It feels lighter, nimbler, and the good part is that while it feels very solid on the highway, putting the wind blast part aside, it feels very stable, very poised on the highway. But the moment you take it around a bend of corners, it does come across as a motorcycle which can be a lot of fun if you know what it's meant to do. So unlike the Royal Enfield Classic, which has its limitation, this one feels very nimble and agile and ready for action. Of course, if you're someone who's a pro at corner carving, you'll see that the foot pegs do strike the tar the moment you lean the motorcycle aggressively. So it's not meant for aggressive corner carving, but if you want to be going around a set of gentle bends in a fun manner, this motorcycle is up to that kind of action. So someone who wants moderate fun with motorcycle, this motorcycle can do that as well, and it can be a lot of fun for someone who wants a moderately fun, nimble motorcycle. Again, when you lean hard, when you're going hard around corners, you can really feel that the rear is a little bit soft. You can feel the tail wobbling just a little bit the moment you go harder than usual. And again, it starts showing its limitation when you try to treat it like a proper sport bike. But for the most part, I really believe, as compared to most of the cruisers, this is a nimbler, more agile setup which can be a lot of fun. Talking specifically about its differences as compared to the Harley, I've already talked about the 2 Newton meters less that it has. It has lighter weight. The wheelbase is slightly shorter. This one has 17 wheels up front and at the rear. The Harley has 18 up front. The Harley also gets USD forks. This one gets right side up forks. This gets an LCD instrument console, while the Harley has a full color TFT display. So those essentially are the differences, but it has its own advantages in the fact that this is lighter, this is nimbler, this is also not as expensive as the Harley, and looks like a motorcycle which is unlike anything else on the road. I'll come to the design part also, because you've already seen the motorcycle and you probably have your own opinions. After I've talked about a few other technical aspects of the motorcycle. About the mirrors, they are reasonably wide. They're not entirely useless, but definitely they could have been wider. They could have provided a better view of the rear. But if you know how to use the mirrors, they are not a constraint. They are not a limiting factor, and they give you a decent view of what's coming from behind the moment you tuck your elbows in. The fuel tank here is 13.5 liters, and with a highway fuel efficiency of about 35 kilometers to the liter to a range of about 450 kilometers, which is pretty good. Now the gearbox also is a 6-speed unit, and it's a slick shifting gearbox, no problems whatsoever. However, you cannot turn the ignition on if the motorcycle is in gear, even if the clutch is depressed, which brings me to the clutch, which is light, and if you are riding it within the city, you should not have any problem. It comes with a slipper clutch, and generally the clutch action is pretty good. You won't find your fingers aching even if you're using it in stop-start city traffic for long hours. The quality of switchgear is good. I cannot say it's great, but it's not bad either. Everything seems to be finished pretty well, but I'm saying that it's not great essentially because I've seen slightly better built switchgear, but for the class that it represents, I think the quality of switchgear is pretty good. So you have a hazard here, you have a start stop button, you don't have that one touch start here, so you really have to keep the button pressed. Then you have this SOS button, which is present only on the eSIM enabled motorcycle. Mind you, the instrument console is Bluetooth enabled on all the variants. However, on the top of the line variant, you also get eSIM connectivity and 35 plus connected features like geofencing and all of those modern features. You will also be able to get turn button, navigation, call reject, SMS alert, etc. on the base variants also. Right here you have the high and the low beam, turn indicator with this cancel button, and this is how the horn sounds. You also have this USB socket here, and this is the tiny LCD screen. The legibility of the tacho can be a bit of an issue because the markings are very small. It's not as bad as the Triumph 400 though. Here you have the fuel, you have the range, then you have the odo, 2 trip meters, and as you can see, cycling through various screens can sometimes be a bit of a problem. You really have to press hard to cycle through various screens. I think this could have been a little bit better, and to reset you use this button here. So you have 2 trip meters, you have instantaneous fuel efficiency here, but you don't get average fuel efficiency. If you want to get that number, you can get that on the app, but not here. Then you have a clock, the gear indicator, the speedo, and that's pretty much it, apart from the telltale lights where you have the turn indicators, the side stand on, neutral, high beam, ABS, low fuel, engine malfunction, and the low fuel warning as well. Now this also comes with an automatic headlamp which turns on when the lighting, the ambient lighting goes down, and here this is the sensor, so when this senses that the lighting around you is not enough, the headlamps will come on automatically. This here is what the wave bite key looks like, and this is the tank fuel filler cap. Now the one thing that I don't like about this entire setup is the way these wires are coming out, and just like the Harley, they could have been better concealed. However, I still think that Hero have done a better job of it. So these wires here are probably not as bad looking as on the Harley, but they could have looked a little bit neater anyway. Now in terms of electronics, this does not come with advanced electronics which are available on a lot of other motorcycles like riding modes and cornering ABS or traction control and whatnot. It's a pretty simple setup, but having said that, I must also appreciate the way Hero have tuned the chassis and the suspension and the overall stability of the motorcycle. And for seasoned riders, they should not miss any of those electronics because this is a very sorted motorcycle, a lot of fun, and feels in control most of the time. Now, having talked about all of that brings me to the looks of this bike, and you've seen it already. In a way, it reminds me of the Diavel in part. The mass of the motorcycle is up front with the round headlamp and this heavy tank and the shroud and the exposed engine, the machined fins. It looks quite bulky up front, but as you move towards the rear, that weight is gone. Unlike the Harley, the exhaust here is not as long, it's slightly stubbier. And talking again about the exhaust, fire it up and let you hear the sound of this exhaust so that you know whether or not it sounds better than the Harley. It's really in the low to mid revs where this motorcycle really sounds its best, and while you're seated and moving, when you open the throttle, the roar that it produces is really likable. And if you're someone who likes their motorcycles to have a bassy exhaust note, I think you're going to love it. It's a very nice exhaust note and you're not going to miss your Royal Enfield while riding this. It has a very nice, very bassy, very throaty kind of an exhaust and a very nice beat to it as well. The lighting is all LED, you have LED blinkers and LED tail light, and while it's not a motorcycle which is going to win any beauty contests, what I like about it is that it's not trying to be something else. It has its own character. Actually taken the cruiser route where they could have embellished it with a lot of chrome and tried to go retro, but they've not done that. They wanted to have their own thing going, and I really have to give it to them for being bold and presenting it as a motorcycle which can be an urban commuter as well as a highway machine and has a more urbanish kind of a character to it. Now it's available in 3 variants. You have the base variant, which is available only in one color, that's the white. Then you have the mid variant where you have the blue and the red and the alloys and whatnot. And then finally you have the top of the line variant, which is available in 2 shades of black. One is this matte and the other one is a glossy black. So you have these 3 variants and the price starts from 1.99 lakh rupees, which I think is fantastic for the kind of performance and the kind of riding experience that this motorcycle offers for a big 400cc plus kind of a single which sounds nice, has tons of torque and is developed in collaboration with Harley-Davidson, and the previous version of which is available for a significant amount of extra money. So good value for money motorcycle. And if you really want to compare it with its peers, let me give you a quick lowdown. Now this motorcycle here is priced from 1.99 to 2.14 lakh rupees, and if you compare it with the Harley, the price difference is from 40 to 66,000 rupees, because the Harley is priced from 2.4 to 2.8 lakh rupees. The Speed 400 is priced at 2.33 lakh rupees, but I must say that the performance there is definitely a lot better than here, and that motorcycle also comes with liquid cooling. Now if you want to be comparing this motorcycle with the champion of a sub-segment, that is the Royal Enfield Classic, that motorcycle is about 6,000 rupees cheaper for the base variant, 1.93 lakh rupees, and for the top of the line variant, that motorcycle is actually more expensive than this at 2.25 lakh rupees, which means that this motorcycle actually is tremendous value for money if you're looking for an air-cooled, engined, cruiserish kind of a motorcycle. So all in all, as I mentioned, after riding it for a day, I think this motorcycle has more to offer than what meets the eye. And if you're in the market for a motorcycle which is big, again, it's not a big looking motorcycle. So if you're 6 feet or taller, maybe this is not going to look as big as the Harley, but it is still relatively reasonably large looking motorcycle. So if you're in the market for large motorcycle with a large engine, you simply cannot overlook this motorcycle. It has more to offer than what meets the eye. It's got a fantastic refined engine, good fuel efficiency. It does nothing wrong at all, and you'd be committing a mistake if you don't take a test ride of this motorcycle before you make your buying decision. I quite like this motorcycle, and I really hope that you liked this video review of this motorcycle as well. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to Motoroids, and until next time, this is your friend Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and ride safe.